Hi guys, it's not looking good for Iceland. It's worse than we thought. And now international researchers are sounding the alarm and the warning bell because they say this has been only the beginning. Iceland needs to brace for more to come, and especially the Reykjanes Peninsula. And they tell us what they found and why that is. So they say brace for multiple simultaneous eruptions, and it's not only Grindavik that is threatened, way more important areas, guys. So we'll talk about this in this video. Stay tuned. It's kind of like mind-blowing. Let's have a look. It's not looking so good in Iceland, guys. When they thought that it might be over now with that eruption that just ended, nope. There were other scientists from out of the country that looked at what's going on a little bit deeper, and they have found out what is going on. So I was a little bit surprised when I heard about it, because I haven't heard about that from the Icelandic MET Office or from the University of Iceland specifically, or in all the comments and interviews we've just recently heard from the geologists and volcanologists that are local in Iceland. So there was a mention here and there, but the overall picture, I mean, we knew when the eruptions started, or when the events started on November 10th last year. Yes, of course, one volcanologist of the University of Iceland said, well, the Reykjanes Peninsula has been dormant for 800 years, and it did wake up now, and it can last for decades or centuries. But then basically the common belief right now is that if this eruption ends there, and it did end, that this might be it for the Reykjanes Peninsula, that it might move somewhere else. But number one, it doesn't look like this was the last one, because the magma chamber under Swartsengi still keeps expanding. It's still magma flowing in there because the land keeps rising. But what are they saying? So these scientists, and I'll tell you in a minute who they are, they're saying that the volcanic eruptions on the Reykjanes Peninsula may last decades or centuries. So, and one thing that is interesting to know that we have to look at, because we know that they did study the lava that was coming out in the last eruption that we had. And Thorvaldur Thorvaldsson, he's a volcanologist at the University of Iceland, said, well, this lava was different. There were traces of older lava that were similar to what was coming out of the 2021 Fagradalsfjall eruption, which is in the area, you see it on the map. It's a little bit east of where we had the action the last few months. So, and his conclusion was that he thinks that's why the eruption period in the Sutnuka crater series that is threatening Grindavik and the Swartsengi power plant, the Blue Lagoon, will end this summer, by the end of this summer, because he says these traces of like lava that looks like Fagradalsfjall, that seems to be older lava, and it seems now even the old stuff's coming out right now. We will see if he's right, because the magma chamber is refilling with new stuff. But one thing is different. It's not refilling as fast as it did after the previous eruption ended. So you see the graph here, the curve is more flat. So will it die off? Are these pipes that are coming from the deeper magma reservoir solidifying? Will it close down? But since we're talking from the deeper magma reservoir, and this is what these scientists did find out, and I'll explain you more about this, is the eruptions of the previous 3 years, that includes Fagradalsfjall, are all fed by a single magma reservoir. And I'll tell you what this means in a second. So they are warning that the peninsula could be entering a new volcanic period, and they will also reveal how bad it could get for Iceland, and they're saying the worst is yet to come. And that's the topic of today's video. We will look deeper into this, what their findings are. Overall, we know that since 2021, when Fagradalsfjall started, Iceland has been rocked by 8 volcanic eruptions, and it has sent citizens fleeing from their homes. And especially just in the recent 8 months, the town of Grindavik has been rattled by these repeated earthquake swarms and the eruptions, right? We know all that. If you're following my channel, you know for sure. So experts warn the worst may yet to come for the residents on the Reykjanes Peninsula. And I'm saying on the Reykjanes Peninsula, and that doesn't mean only Grindavik. So they think that other areas are at risk as well. So listen, guys. They also have studied lava samples because they wanted to find out what's going on the Reykjanes Peninsula. Why did it become so active all over a sudden? So an international team of scientists has looked at the lava samples and at the seismic data from the last 3 years of these eruption phases. So they have discovered that the peninsula, the whole peninsula, is placed on an interconnected magma plumbing system that could keep these volcanoes fed with molten rock for decades to come. And you know, there were theories. Yeah, is it all connected? Or did Fagradalsfjall have its own magma chamber and magma reservoir? And did Sudnuka crater series have its own? Or are they all connected? When we saw that eruption that happened in January, when all of a sudden, you know, the one that burned down 3 homes, the fissure that opened there was a little off in the area, was a little more eastern than the original magma dike that had formed on November 10th. And they were expecting that the eruptions would occur on this magma dike, and the other ones did. So January was off a little bit. So they were wondering, whoopsie, where is this coming from all of a sudden? Is there another magma chamber? Why is it coming up there? It caught them by surprise. So the theories were emerging again that there's different magma chambers. But then down the road, it all got back. There's one magma chamber underneath Swartsengi. But the thing is, this magma chamber is fed by a deeper lying magma reservoir. Is that shared with Fagradalsfjall, or is there one even deeper down? So let's listen to a little bit more information, guys, that I will give you. So the lead author of this new study from the international scientists is called Valentin Troll, and he's a professor of petrology at the Uppsala University. And he says, a comparison of these eruptions with historical events provides strong evidence that Iceland will have to prepare and be ready for this current volcanic episode to continue for some time, possibly even years or decades. And that is not good news. That is not good news at all for the Reykjanes Peninsula. Because imagine, out of almost like 400,000 people that live in Iceland, more than 270,000 people live on the Reykjanes Peninsula. Well, I don't want to go as far as to say the Reykjanes Peninsula almost is Iceland, but it gets close, right? We've got the international airport there. We've got the capital, Reykjavik, there. So it is an important core part of Iceland. And having that stuff going on there, it's not good. Well, we know that Iceland is located directly above the mid-Atlantic ridge, the North Atlantic ridge. That's a boundary between the tectonic plates of North America and Eurasia. So that is basically tearing Iceland apart. And the Reykjanes Peninsula is basically divided into halves by this. And these plates are drifting apart. So it's not a subduction zone where they would go underneath each other. They're drifting apart. So because that is happening, there's hot rocks from the Earth's mantle that can squeeze their way up to the surface. So that mantle of the Earth is the largest of the planet's layers of rocks, right? So that's why the volcanic eruptions in Iceland are a fairly common occurrence, and people who live in Iceland know that they need to live with that. And it's usually one eruption occurs like every 3 to 5 years. But what's happening on the Reykjanes Peninsula is unusual. It has been dormant 800 years, nothing has been going on, and then suddenly it became so active since June 2021 with the Fagradalsfjall eruptions. And then late 2023, the current chain of events with one event basically per month started, that's lasting until now. And it is already disrupting the Reykjanes Peninsula. Their moneymaker, Blue Lagoon, had to be evacuated quite a few times. I mean, they were waiting it out till the last second to rake in the money till the last second as well. But still, they had to be closed. And then Grindavik had to be evacuated. The town is basically quite destroyed. People sold their homes to the government. They're trying to move away. They're recently talking about reviving the town, bringing people back. Does that make sense? Well, the future will have to tell. Now just the last eruption went out with a bang, really sending lava flow along the defense walls of Swartsengi, and then they were going over the defense walls, rolling towards Swartsengi power plant. It's a crucial geothermal power plant that, by the way, also feeds the Blue Lagoon with their excess water, with their wastewater. It's clean water, right? It's a geothermal power plant. But they were really sweating until the last second. They were just lucky that then the eruption did die off and did not send more lava, because it really became critical. They had to start even try to cool the lava with water and try to hold it back with dozers. So it wasn't really fun. So in case you don't know what the Fagradalsfjall eruptions were, they lasted from 2021 to 2023. So they began in March 2021. There was a 180-meter vent that did open at Gelding-Gadalir. That was the first eruption there in 781 years. Then there was August 2022. There was a low-intensity eruption at the same site. And then August 2023, the Litli Rutur eruption did open a 1 kilometer long vent system. But if we compare this to the Reykjanes Peninsula, we had like fissures as long as 3.5, 4 kilometers. So they were like bigger. And then, of course, we call that the Sutnuka crater eruptions that started in November 2023, and it's still ongoing. We know 2023 major seismic event at Grindavik led to the complete evacuation of Grindavik. Then we had December 2023. Eruption did open a 3.5 kilometer fissure. January 2024, fissure opened just 1 kilometer north of Grindavik. That's when the 3 homes were destroyed. March 2024, then we had a small intrusion on March 2nd. Lava didn't reach the surface, but then it was followed almost 2 weeks later by an eruption that covered an area of about more than 6 square kilometers with lava. And then the next one followed in May, and then, we had it died down just recently. But the March one and the May one, they were really lasting way longer than the other ones. And it's still ongoing. And what did the scientists do to understand why this area has suddenly been hit with such an intense volcanic activity? They attempted to find out, where is the lava that's coming out in this eruption really coming from? So they're saying you can compare it to a person. Every person has a unique fingerprint. And just like every person, every piece of magma has a unique combination of about, and that's a lot, 50 different trace elements and 3 different isotypes of oxygen. So that's how you can tell which one is which. So there is a volcanologist of the University of Oregon. Her name is Professor Ilya Bindeman, and she explains in the air we breathe, there is a mixture of these oxygen isotopes, but we can't feel the difference. And usually these differences are not important for chemical reactions, but they are important to recognize as their relative abundances in magma can differentiate one magma source from another magma source. So there they are important. So these researchers did sample lava from different eruptions over the last 3 years. So then they realized that all these samples had an extremely similar chemical fingerprint. So the geochemical analysis of major and trace elements as well as stable isotopes imply that the magma that's erupting at Swartsengi since late 2023 is of the same type as the magmas that erupted at Fagradalsfjall between 2021 and 2023. So the conclusion is that therefore the two eruption sites are fed from the same magmatic source that's down there at a depth. So what does that mean? They have used these data and then they have combined these data with the local earthquake data that they have gathered, the seismic data. And so the researchers are suggesting that the Reykjanes Peninsula sits on top of a magma reservoir, a deeper lying magma reservoir, that's probably down at a depth of 5.5 to 7.5 miles. That's about 9 to 12 kilometers, sits down there in the Earth's crust. And that reservoir is feeding the eruptions. So which one is it? We heard that Thorwaldur Thorwaldsen said just 2 weeks ago approximately that now the lava that they could see, that they analyzed at the Sutnuka crater series is different from the previous eruptions and that it's similar to Fagradalsfjall. But when you hear these researchers, it's been similar all the time. So is the conclusion right to say because the last one is similar to Fagradalsfjall, that's an indication that the older lava has come out as well and that it's dying down? If they're all fed by the same deeper lying magma reservoir, can you come to any conclusions? Let me know, guys, let's discuss this, but there's more to the topic. So since that deeper lying magma reservoir that lies down there is likely being fed by melting rock that is even deeper down in the mantle, that's the part that's not so good. So that is an indication or a proof that there is more than enough magma available to keep hundreds of square miles of lava flowing at the surface for decades. That's what the experts are saying. So there is enough there to really do big disturbances on the Reykjanes Peninsula. And they say the reason why this is more concerning than they thought is that if you look at the past eruption period that the Reykjanes Peninsula had, that last volcanic era, like 800 years ago, lasted for centuries, not decades, centuries. So that's why Professor Troll says the area experiences more intense episodes of tectonic plate motion with durations of 100 to 200 years, followed by lower activity intervals of some 700 to 900 years. Yeah, that's what happened. It did wake up after 800 years. So it seems what he's saying, Reykjanes Peninsula has a more intense tectonic plate tearing apart movement, so to speak. And he says, it appears that we are at the very beginning of such a renewed episode of more intense tectonic activity. And that tectonic activity is the reason for these eruptions. And you know, I looked at the earthquake activity in Iceland the last few days, and really along that ridge that goes through Iceland, we've seen earthquakes in the higher range as well, like magnitude 3 and stuff like this. So movement is definitely happening and occurring right now. And the problem is, since it's been dormant for 800 years, of course, people have settled on the Reykjanes Peninsula because it's not like steep mountains or anything. It's a lot of flat areas where you could settle, where you could build the international Keflavik airport, has some nice areas for ports, for fishing towns where you can conduct business, important fishing business, like Grindavik, for example. So it was a very convenient location, and that's why most of the population of Iceland has settled on the Reykjanes Peninsula. And since it has been even more quiet than the rest of Iceland, that was even more ideal. So really, it's like this southwestern region is home to 70% of the country's population. You really have to get that into your mind again. And it's the only international airport that Iceland has, the Keflavik airport. They were thinking about building a second airport, but also on the Reykjanes Peninsula. And then, of course, several very important geothermal power plants. And they're just realizing that these plants need way more protection and preparedness, because the last eruption, it was a close call for the Swartsengi power plant. So the residents are getting more and more aware of how bad things could be since all these last eruptions started last year, and how dangerously close the lava came to their critical infrastructure. So the professor says that based on prior eruptive behavior, this pattern is likely to continue into the future, posing considerable risk to the local population and important infrastructure. So that infrastructure, and that's what the scientists are saying, and now this is the scary part, that infrastructure involves Keflavik Airport, several geothermal power plants, the Blue Lagoon, of course, and population centers like Keflavik, Grindavik, and Greater Reykjavik. Because we know there's several volcanic systems, and especially the Grindavik system did send an ancient lava flow into the outskirts of Reykjavik. Of course, Reykjavik hasn't existed like that at this time, but it's rumbling there as well. There's this Bluffjell ski area. There have been earthquakes during the winter. So if it erupts there, it could flow right into the suburbs of Reykjavik as well. That's why Thorvaldur Thorvaldsson said, well, we should consider building defense walls there as well. But they are expensive, right? It costs a lot of money to do so. So it looks like there's internal talking about building defense walls, and I think they better get going. And here it comes, it gets worse, guys. It gets really worse. So the discovery of that shared magma chamber makes things worse, because they're saying it could make the risk higher that there could likely be several simultaneous eruptions along the peninsula. So they've already been busy with that one eruption, having all their big machines and dozers and pumps and water spraying equipment there. Now let's imagine there's several, not like two, several simultaneous eruptions in different areas that are threatening settlements and infrastructure. They have to up their game significantly. That sounds scary, guys. So the researchers are warning that Iceland and the Reykjanes Peninsula will likely need to brace for more volcanic activity in the future. Of course, they're saying it's extremely difficult to predict exactly when a volcano will erupt, but they say now more than ever, more eruptions are extremely likely. So the conclusion of this research is that they're saying our findings provide valuable information for anticipating and managing future volcanic activity on the Reykjanes Peninsula, and we would like to stress the need for preparedness. So not good news, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Please leave this video a like, subscribe if you're new here, guys. And I'd love to see you in one of my other videos. There's a lot going on in Italy at Campi Flegrei, so check that out. And click the notification bell so that you know when I release a new video. So I hope you're having a great summer. Where is summer right now? And thanks, everyone. I'll see you very, very soon, I hope. Bye-bye.